there's a been there, done that. When you see an archetype of what a leader looks like, and fortunately for us and for the next generation workforce, we have been changing that like slowly, steadily. And by the way, it's not even just female representation. There's so much minority representation that we should be talking about here because it's just as punctuated by what I'm about to say. But when you don't see it, it's like you don't, build the muscle of accepting and understanding that is what it could look like.
Welcome to Beta Tested. I'm Stacey Bohr. This podcast is built on the simple idea that nobody becomes extraordinary because they're perfect. Each episode, I'll sit down with the most amazing women in media, tech, business, and culture to talk honestly about ambition, failure, growth, reinvention, and all the moments that help shape them along the way. Because the truth is, we're still figuring it out in real time. Let's get to it. Okay, Lauren, thank you for coming on the show. How are you?
I am wonderful. I'm so excited to be here, especially to talk with you, Stacey.
Thank you.
Known you a long time, and I'm excited to be here.
Do you remember how we met?
Yeah, I wanted to hire you.
Really? Because I wanted to work for you, but for some reason it didn't work out. But I'm like, she doesn't get to leave my life.
No, I just sort of follow you. There's always the ones that get away when you either, especially when it's tough in startup land, when you just like, maybe you have a role, maybe you don't, and you kind of have your eyes on people. And then the cool part is just watching careers sort of flourish from that moment on. And so obviously I've tracked you from the trade desk to Crisp to current role within OpenX. And now it's exciting to see you kind of turn this. I don't know if we call this a side hustle or just like a gift to the industry, but definitely a conversation that's so needed.
Where are you? What are you doing with your life right now?
All right. So I am at WPP and I am in a role leading data and technology solutions. And it's pretty much exactly as it sounds. I help to, oversee and manage and lead the product and engineering teams that are building out our end-to-end marketing platform, which is open, helping make decisions as to how our teams and our clients embrace agentic AI. And then really fundamentally, which comes from my InfoSum roots, which for those who don't know, I was the CEO of InfoSum before joining WPP when InfoSum was acquired a year and probably a month ago. Time flies when you're having fun. But the sort of third component of that is this data foundation layer where we've just sort of fundamentally believed in this idea of connected intelligence, of this idea of, controlling your data, of doing not just sort of meet the threshold of privacy, but going further beyond that, doing what's right for consumers. And really the magic of what happens when you can unlock the greatest value, not just from data, but from modeled intelligence. And so a range of those different things. I'm really privileged to lead these teams, some of the smartest in the business. And we have some of the most innovative clients and, kind of coming really from pure technology into a very large agency, which storied, agencies like Ogilvy and Gray. And then obviously WPP Media, which speaks for itself. It's just such a privilege because I just feel like I'm, learning from the best, working with the best.
That's where you want to be.
That is where you want to be.
You're in good company. I am totally putting you on the spot, but do you happen to know, if not, I'm going to ChatGPT this after. Do you happen to know how many people are in your role? Like, you are a woman leading data, and that feels rare.
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel you see it a lot more in smaller companies. I feel in the exposure I got at InfoSum to venture-backed companies and to, and obviously in sort of a startup environment, those roles, sometimes have less influence and less resources under them. But I want to say, I know Cindy Rose, our fearless CEO leader of all of WPP, gets sort of, there's a Wall Street Journal article that just recently came out, and it was very narrowed in on her being the first female, holdco leader. And while it's incredible to sort of say it out loud, it's almost like all of the great things that they were saying about her, I wanted to say like, but it doesn't matter that she's female. It actually, she's making all these tough decisions, and it's more about just her role as a leader. But I agree with you. I don't think there are many female leaders who, one, are in technology, two, are in technology or data. And obviously that's something we got to fix.
We have to fix it. And in this moment, I want you to feel really proud of it, because the world around us could do a better job at bringing us along the way. And that's some of what I want to talk about today. But You grabbed it. And that's also what I want to focus on. And I was just thinking, this is so going rogue, but data is so black and white. But there's so many stories to be told and so many ways to look at data. And I always think of data being something associated with IQ, but you have such high EQ. Off script, how do you marry those two things to influence?
That's a really good question. I learned really early on in my career, fortunately. I kind of always say I grew up in consulting, and it's such a people are the product business. Really, any professional services group, I think you, especially at large environments, like where I came from, you get more training. And the training is, yes, a lot of like analytics and hands-on hard skills, as I would call it. But you also get a lot of the soft skills, the human skills, which obviously builds up the muscle of awareness and obviously emotional intelligence. And so I think it comes a lot from that. I happen to be fortunate in graduate school to sort of study leadership and ethics and to apply it as a part of a range of programs within that. And so I almost just took like an academic approach to learning about authentic leadership. There's a book that I love. I recommend it to a lot of people. It's called True North by Bill George. He kind of led that first course at Harvard around authentic leadership. And I think there's more of a moment now than ever before where EQ is, one, analyzed, talked about, ranked, where candidates are evaluated on it. I find I end up probably putting more value on EQ over IQ for a given, especially for anyone who's managing teams and who's in organizations where you need to be influential, across different teams, especially cross-functional roles. But I think it didn't necessarily happen by accident so much as I got a lot of that training and that emphasis really early on that, yes, you have to be smart. Yes, you need to know analytics. Yes, you have to have like this range of skills, and here's the training for it. How are your clients reacting to things? How are your teams reacting to things? Step into their shoes. I think it's so important when you're in professional services to really understand and to be client obsessed. You have to ask, yourself, where are they coming from? How are they feeling? What's impacting them? Most of the time, it's probably different than your day to day. Fielding a range of different client requests, and so I think it's really, really important. And I'm glad it's a topic on a podcast and one we're even having a conversation about today.
It's what drives revenue, in my opinion. Everyone likes to make money, but running a sales team without understanding my team, good luck. I will never hit the numbers if I can't see them, like really see them. But you raised awareness, and I was wondering how or what your vision looked like when you were younger. Did you know you would be who you are?
Well, that implies that
you're, like, look at all the things you're doing. Like, did you have a clear vision, or like, where did you come from?
That's a great, from Baltimore, Maryland,
Nice.
loud and proud, always representing. I would say early in my career, I think I was much more focused on just learning than I would say leading. Like, I was super curious. I wanted to understand the ecosystem. I knew I wanted to do business. I really liked, observing people in business, how decisions were made. I then sort of from just a general feeling about business and doing internships, then I realized, wow, I think technology is really driving businesses forward. How are people adopting technology? What are they using? How are products built? How does this create value for an organization? How do things work? And then I think leadership became a part of the vision later. I just realized I can't drive outcomes myself, but if I can create environments where other people do their best work too, sometimes that means I've witnessed poor leadership. I think fortunately, more for me, I've been observing really effective leaders in action, being motivated by that level of impact. But I think in the basic way, I was like, I know I want to do business and I know I'd like to travel for work. Like I'd want to be one of those people who's like, I was just in London. I just came back from this thing. And, I always wanted to be credible for whatever it was that I was doing. Again, from like an intern task at a really early stage, to taking on like a teacher assistant. Like I've always taken those little opportunities really seriously and sort of honed the craft of whatever it was that I was doing. But it was much, I would say, later in career, witnessing very influential leaders and realizing, okay, it's great if I'm doing all these little things and I'm doing it really well and I'm sort of known for that. But what if I can create these environments that allow so many other people to feel, not empowered just to do those types of things, but to feel really safe in building those skills, to failing, to rebounding, to building out their talent. And then as a result, then I became really focused on leadership. Like, what do I take on next? What do I do? And the ambition started to fuel a hunger to, want to lead teams, to want to be uncomfortable, to wanting to manage ambiguity. And then that pursuit, I think, is definitely what brought me to, end up in a CEO role at a company, which if I would have told little Lauren way back when, I probably would have been surprised by that. I would say, and I know we're going to get into this topic, but I think sponsorship is so much of it as well. I had not just mentors, but sponsors. There's a big difference there. I've had people who, raised my name in rooms that I wasn't in, advocated for me. And then in rooms that I was in and face-to-face, heart-to-heart, one-on-one, critical conversations, just tell me, you could be doing more. You could be doing this next thing. Had people say, you could be a CEO. And, you don't believe that until someone says it. And when you have someone who you respect say, you can be a CEO, you're like, by golly, maybe.
What the? Maybe?
Maybe he's right. Maybe I can.
But there's so many follow-up questions to that. One being, you created an environment that enabled someone to give you feedback. How did you, in your own head, because I'm finding so much of what stops us is our own internal voices. How did you take the good, but remove the stuff that you didn't want? Or said another way, embrace the constructive feedback versus internalizing it and make it a future blocker that got into your head where you worried that you weren't, as you said, credible. Like, because of this, I must not be credible. I'm hearing that a lot.
I have been in environments where feedback was like a sport, like a very regular, just part of your work. Again, in consulting, you sort of wrap up a project and you get like ranked and filed on like a 2x2 and you know where you are, you know what went well, you know what didn't go well. And so I built a muscle really early on to just prepare for it. The good, the bad, the ugly, the things I'm excited and I know I'm going to hear, because everyone knows when they're shining. Everyone knows, you just know it in your bones when you did something well. The things that kind of jolt you because you're like, wait a second, no one's ever told me that about me. Like, I had no idea I did this thing, in a way that obviously wasn't what I intended, or where I need some work on it. And then there's also the things that kind of fall in the category of, yeah, I know I don't do that well, and it's good to just hear it and validate that intuition. I've luckily never been afraid of it, and I'd rather just know. Like, I deal well with information. Knowledge is power. I do really well with data and feedback on myself. And I think part of it is because I've just been solutions oriented. Like I believe fundamentally in the power of people being able to evolve, people being able to change, people being able to take and catch the feedback and then move on from it in a productive way. I say to my teams all the time, see it, say it, sort it, or see something, say something. And I try and live by that as well. If I see somebody not moving in the right direction and they're unaware of it, like I will make sure to sit that person down and in the right context and the right tone, give them, the awareness that I think that they need and the feedback and what people are saying about you outside of the room. In a perfect culture and environment, you just hear it directly, but that doesn't always happen. But I think I built a muscle really early on for feedback. I think it's incredibly important to just cultivate the space and to lead teams in a way that they're not afraid of giving you feedback, that, you don't think everything's perfect. You don't think everything's right. And so the more that it's like little small things you can do. Sometimes it's me being self-deprecating, like, oh, I bet I have this totally wrong. And so you all tell me, because I even if I've spent tons of time on something, sometimes I'll throw it out as though I just like was winging it so that people feel safe in the space. So like, I'm not going to be offended and I'm not precious about it. And maybe that's a summary of a lot of this, which is like, it just like, you just shouldn't be precious about, if we were maybe in a different industry, where there's like a body on the table that we're operating on right now between you and I, and like there's lives on the line. We're so fortunate to work in this creative, impactful space. But as a result, like I don't take it all too seriously. And as a result, like I don't take criticism or feedback, the good and the bad.
Gift.
Negatively.
I don't know who you have to thank for that, but that is the unlock. I'm finding that I work on optimizing away the internal voice of so many women on my team. And the more that voice goes down, the greater their performance and trajectory becomes. So that's so cool.
Yeah, I think it also, when you realize, like sometimes when you just sit and you listen to someone and they say something to you and you want to take it personally, or you believe you're not that way, but then you actually just pretend like your opinion doesn't matter. You're like, okay, let's just say that this is the gospel according to, this is the truth. This is what it is. And your opinion, Lauren, does not matter. And then you start to act on that and you just start to change things based on that feedback. And then you see positive results from it. Like that to me is really powerful. And I've done that before. Like I've not believed feedback that came my way, and I wanted to roll my eyes and, move on to the next chapter in the other room and say thanks, thanks, but no thanks. But instead, if you just say, let's just pretend that this is a really strong data point and let me change a little bit of my style and see what happens. And then when you start to see more progress, more productivity based on that feedback, like that's super powerful. And again, I give credit. I can almost always remember all of the critical pieces of feedback, like the things, it's like it sticks with you. And by the way, some things, are really tough. Like I am this way and it's just difficult for me to adjust and to change. And I just will know that about myself. And usually I'll say like, I'm working on it. I've been working on it for a lifetime.
And we forget the good stuff half the time.
Yeah, we do. We definitely do.
But there's no way it's been smooth sailing since day one. So have you had to use your voice, advocate for yourself, ask for a promotion, or anything in that bucket that is a memory you think that's worth sharing?
Definitely. I went into what I would call industry from consulting. And sometimes, when you're in different fields and it's apples to oranges in terms of compensation, in terms of maybe the things you're giving up when you make that choice. And I'm sure people feel this way all the time, by the way, if you're going from big tech to startup, if you're going like anything that's not exactly the same conditions as you're entering, I think you always have to advocate and you have to translate. You have to be very clear, like I was getting these things and I might not get these exact things, but as a result, like I need something else for it. So I think advocacy is more education and being very clear on the fact that a place, wants you, especially if you're making a jump to a new company or making a jump to a new industry or making a jump to a different field from professional services to to being a part of a brand or a company or vice versa. Like there's just always going to have to be a little translation. There's typically in most adjustments, there's also a little bit of acceptance of the things you're not going to get. But I think as a result, self-advocacy, it's so much more about just being clear and sort of driving what I would call like professional clarity. Like the strongest leaders that I've seen, they're just very clear about the value that they create, the scope that they're operating at, the sort of, again, the framing of this is where I was coming from, this is where I'm going, this is what I could otherwise get. And yeah, I think you often, and maybe this is more, female than male, like the data would tell me that that's the case. But so many times people think that advocating for themselves is this like selfish activity. But honestly, like you can't expect people to calibrate your value, to understand your value correctly if you're constantly minimizing yourself and if you're constantly afraid of what people will think about you saying, about being the hype person for yourself. Like, and, there's not going to be a separate room all the time. Maybe the hiring manager will, go to bat for you with the talent acquisition team. Maybe that's the case. Maybe they'll escalate it to the highest powers that be. But oftentimes it has to just start with being very calm and cool and collected. And sometimes it doesn't come until a certain stage of your career. But at least you can do is be, clear, communicate it, and then, see where things go from there.
It sounds so data-driven, which is so on point for you. And I'm hearing the narrative portion too, but my guess is it's underpinned with quantifiable movement in the business and a clear indication of the value that you're bringing. You're not just throwing at the wall.
Yeah, and I think if I'm going into a decision like this, I've already armed myself with all that data, with all of the like opportunity costs, with all of the pro con, yellow legal pad checklist, which is now much more automated for me thanks to great technology. You have all of that going into even walking into an interview, even to making the jump to having a conversation about something else or to make a move within a company. So it's not just about when you leave, but it's also obviously about advocating for a next leader role, for more scope, more responsibility. But yeah, you just have to be clear. Honestly, more times than not, when I'm very confident and I'm not asking for something, but I'm very clear and confident, that's when I've gotten things. Like when I'm actually
easy. I've had that experience.
Like I'm not asking for this job, but like it sounds like I'm giving people calm and, confidence that I could do this job, which is interesting because there's a lot of other people advocating for this job and who want this job and maybe they'd be great for this job. But it's sometimes I've found that just doing the work, just putting your head down, just being really clear and having that conviction, that sometimes that's actually the driver of where you get the next, expanded role, the next promotion, more responsibility, more authority.
I, at one point, was like, okay, where's my promotion? I've been here for how long? I'm hitting how many numbers? And it wasn't until I realized, oh, take the power they're giving you. Like, what are you doing? And you kind of have to step into the role before anyone can visualize it. Yep. It's not, she'll be good for this thing she's never shown any signs of being able to do.
Yeah, almost, I would say more times than not, you're just doing the role. Like you're doing whatever the next thing is. You're pushing the company forward without sort of a formal request to do it. You're doing the right thing when, no one's looking. And then eventually someone comes around and their eyes light up and they see the work that you're doing. And hopefully if it's the right, level of advocacy and sponsorship and good leadership at a company, they see it and, and they want people like that to be in the right decision-making roles.
You brought up a couple times sponsorship and mentorship. Can you further underscore the difference and give any advice you can about how do you know you have one? How do you think you have one, but do you? and build that trust, ask for it, anything, because you have been a strong example with strong ties in the industry where you just know there are some dynamics where it's the condition of being good at your job exists, but beyond that, it's unconditional. I believe in you and let's build together.
Yeah, I think one, mentorship's incredibly important. If the company I'm in doesn't have a mentorship program, like I will found that mentorship program, like I will sponsor it. I will invest in it. I think it's so incredibly important. And I think mentors are there to advise you, to sort of play back the things that you're concerned about, to give you confidence. They're typically at a few levels above where you are and where you want to be. But sponsors advocate for you when you're not in the room. And both matter. Both are really important. And I have some of the greatest people whom I just have loved working with and I'm so grateful for, who just fit into these two different camps. Sometimes you can be both mentor and sponsor, but sponsors are, they're just pushing you a little further, and they're doing so in a way where there's like a strong sense of advocacy. And as a result, typically that means that sponsorship is earned through trust, through excellence, through visibility, because no one's going to toss your name out. No one's going to advocate for you when you're not even asking for it specifically, unless there is such a grounding in trust and faith in people being able to take on a role that they're being teed up for. I would often say women typically tend to over-index on mentorship and under-invest in sponsorship. So as much as I just said, I love mentorship programs, like even thinking about this question means I want to maybe like launch like a sponsorship, program. I think because of that difference that I talk to. And yeah, I think there's just a few more muscles you have to build to be a sponsor. And sometimes I think that's the part that our industry misses. Like everyone is taught how to pay it forward, how to, lend time, to give advice, to respond to the cold email for someone who wants to be in a role like you. Like I honestly try my best to respond to as many people who reach out, whether that's on LinkedIn or within my company, and just set up some level of time. But it is really different than the people I sponsor. And it's really different than me being proactive to, frankly, I think a really good testament is when you have people who work for you, who maybe you've mentored or you've led for a while. And when you propose them for a role that's outside your group, but is best for them, like to me, that is sponsorship, because it is putting that person's career, maybe their earning potential, their, opportunity to lead more, to be in a bigger role with more influence. You're putting that above just you always having your people who are getting the work done and you being in a great place. And I think that's a really good example of sponsorship. But I don't think we talk as an industry as much about sponsorship. But, again, someone said to me point blank, like, you should be a CEO, and put me in such a weird and uncomfortable position of, the questions of why are you so comfortable being this smart person behind the scenes and doing all of this work, and, you kind of never ask for credit, and you never, which I don't think those aspects of it were sort of like seen as bad qualities. It was more just, why is your ambition at the ceiling of not?
You can do more. Why not?
Yeah, you can do more. You can do more. Our industry would be better for it. And sometimes you just need someone who's saying that, one, to your face, and then two, if they can say it behind closed doors when the opportunity strikes and there's, there's like a moment where your career can take a turn. I think that's true sponsorship.
I'm thinking of someone right now that's amazing. And I'm sure your sponsor, to your point, saw through patterns of behavior that he or she just had so much conviction in your work that they saw more in you than you even saw in yourself. And it was like, let's go, Lauren. Like, we got this. Like, you can go to the moon.
That's right.
So I'm looking at my notes and I have the answer to my question, which is, women hold 28% of leadership roles in tech. Leadership, that's a big term, so we don't know how that's defined. But are there any structural blockers that still hold us back as women?
Probably it's just still access to the highest visibility opportunities. It gets back to that over-mentored, under-sponsored, not having sponsorship networks that can accelerate careers. I think that gap becomes really visible at the executive level. And so much of it, I think, comes from, just awareness. I think some of it comes from women also have a tendency to feel like they have to do it all before they're eligible. So like, I must show, we talked about that. We talked about how sometimes you just have to be doing the job before you get the job, which, I do believe in. It instills confidence, but sometimes I think women are almost like over preparing, like, I will have every answer. I will know all of the things, and I will do that before I even venture to raise my hand, to try and to test something. And, and I often see there's more of a critical eye towards a woman who hasn't done that job yet before and is raising their hand to, a male counterpart who hasn't done that job before, but is raising their hand. I think it's just, there's a been there, done that. When you see so many, when you see an archetype of what a leader looks like, and fortunately for us and for the next generation workforce, we have been changing that like slowly, steadily. And by the way, it's not even just female representation. There's so much minority representation that we should be talking about here, because it's just as punctuated by what I'm about to say. But when you don't see it, it's like you don't, build the muscle of accepting and understanding that is what it could look like. And, and unfortunately, I think that's just been part of the challenges in the industry. I think there just needs to continue to be routes where people can challenge that. I think the challenging of it comes from people giving confidence to others to say, apply for that role, go for it, or even better, who says she would be great for that. She could do that job, and says it even before that person has, proven it with all the check boxes and exactly what the experience was looking for. So I think there needs to be more of, jumping first and taking opportunities well before someone just feels like they have perfectly earned the role. I think there needs to be more sponsorship. I think the more that we can take mentorship opportunities and convert it to sponsorship, I think that 28% gets better.
That's really cool. My takeaway also is the muscle memory of what you're saying, which is why I'm so grateful you're on this podcast, because look at you, and you start to become crystallized in everyone's brain as this is what a CEO looks like, or
Yeah,
fill
that's right.
the title now. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You are at every table. So in the context of minorities in general, how do you show up and make sure they are represented? That's a tough role to be in, because you too are a human who had to build that muscle memory.
Yeah, I think you said this earlier, like I'm a data-driven person. There's so much data that makes the case that diversity isn't just, good for the humans, it's good for business. And so when you apply with that lens, like how much business progresses and results progress with a diverse set of leaders calling the shots, making the decisions, leading an organization, I think it just becomes a really difficult to dispute thing. And so what I do is, first of all, you just like eyes wide open, you look and you see if you've got, you're on the right track or you got a problem. And if you have a problem, you just say it. I've been super honest with my team when I pulled together 4 organizations, which are my kind of new consolidated function within WPP. And one of the first things I said was, we have a diversity problem. And it's on a bunch of different levels. It's yes, it could be male, female. It could be, more years of experience within an agency versus not as many years of experience in an agency, like pure tech experience. It could be, people of color. It could be even just cultural from a perspective of like the concentration of where everyone's comes. We have a lot. WPP is a storied, UK headquartered company. And so there's a lot of Brits. And that's great. And I love my colleagues who are British. But when it's all British, then you kind of need to ask the question, like, okay, like what else can we bring in to create, again, more of a diverse team? And I think part of it is also it's the workforce that's working for those leaders. And when they don't see themselves represented, and that can now, again, extend even beyond the things that people can visually see, that could be being a part of a community like LGBTQ+. And when people don't see those who are the champions of those communities represented, that also then feels like you're in an organization where, you can't, one, be your authentic self, and two, thrive and eventually kind of grow your career to a most senior level. And so it just honestly takes awareness, eyes wide open. It takes what I find to be a very easy, sound, data-driven argument for those who don't want to prioritize it as a problem, who are like, that's fine, like, you're okay, like, like sometimes I get Lauren's leading it and she's female. So like, the most senior person there, we're good, like check that box. And it's like, actually, that's not really how this works. And I think sometimes saying it aloud, even when it's not perfect. So being honest and saying, and it doesn't mean, by the way, that the people who are there on your team, like, let's shuffle them out because they're not checking. You're not
trying to dilute their voice.
100%. It's not about that. It's about being aware that you are, that you have a leadership team that could afford to be more diverse. And so what are we doing about it? What are the programs that ensure that diverse voices are being heard? What are the programs that we're instilling so that people have an awareness that this is, something to champion? It is more important today than it ever has been to be so loud on this topic. It really is, because it's a really scary shift in narrative where people are almost taking it as there's a new way to think about it, and it's not as big of a problem as we thought. That we went over-rotated on diversity and inclusion, and now, we can get by. And it's like, as a result of hearing that and frankly reading it on LinkedIn posts and seeing it and obviously some political figures and leaders who have a few things to say on the subject, I think there is no better time than now to be really loud about when, we don't see diversity and answering the question authentically as to what you're doing about it. And you better damn well have good answers to that question.
2 more questions, because honestly, we're at time and I could talk to you for the next hour. You're very intriguing. My question was, what if you're afraid? You know what you want to say. Like, the crazy thing is, for the last however long we've been talking, I haven't picked up on much, if any, insecurities, which I think is one of the reasons you're unstoppable. But you've lived that. Like, what if you're afraid to say something? How do you find the courage?
I think it just comes from, I don't know, trust, like a little bit of just like trusting yourself first, which isn't sort of like an easy check the box, like, I trust myself and therefore like I'm going to walk in, I'm going to say the thing. It's like having tougher, authentic conversations and almost being really comfortable with what you know and what you don't know. You can say anything and be confident when you have that awareness. Like, it gets back to EQ. Like, I don't have all the answers. Like, I absolutely don't. I do not know all of the smartest of things that my teams are doing down to the very, very detailed level. And I am a hands-on, detailed person who likes to know how to build things. But there are not enough minutes or hours in the day for me to know everything. And so what I can do is to be honest and comfortable and clear when I know something and when I don't know something, and then no room and no conversation is off limits so long as I'm being true about, I know these things and I have conviction on it because I've sat with it, I've thought about it, And
Probably being
so,
data driven, not being impulsive.
yeah,
And when
yeah,
you have data to support your notion, you probably, I'm guessing, because I want to be more data driven after this conversation, you probably have a lot more confidence walking in when you know you're right.
you do. And it doesn't mean you have to use data and get all the right, answers to the test and you therefore know everything. It's actually that's like an impossibility to think that you're going to know all of the answers. I think there's a level of, yes, like preparation and not sort of just constantly winging it, which is important. But I just think it's also trust in yourself and trust in your ability to sort of navigate challenging questions, trust in your ability to say, oh, I'll get back to you, with a better answer because, I know that, Stacy on my team is, has a really thoughtful perspective on this. And I want to make sure I'm best representing that. Every level of what you do in your job, you're always going to have your areas where you're strongest, your areas where you're closest to it, your areas where it's like comes very naturally, how you represent that. And then there's always going to be areas where, they're a little bit less comfortable for you. And so I think it's just about making that the ambiguity and the least comfortable areas manageable. That's it. Like you make that manageable and you get yourself to sort of a calm, steady state of being able to, address and tackle the question about the one. Everyone knows when you're walking to a meeting, the number one topic or the number one question that you don't want someone to ask you. You just know it. Like everyone, you just know, that question, the topic. You like, too many times people over rotate and then they, over process it and they overthink about it. And instead of trying to master something that makes you uncomfortable, you should master the ability to sort of navigate through that into a productive way that, you obviously in the situation of like arriving at an answer or getting an answer to drive decisions, like, there can be a process around that. But I think sometimes just asking yourself the hard questions, like what actually is making you nervous? What am I really afraid of? Okay, I'm actually really afraid of them asking this question. Okay, so what can I do to feel more comfortable with this? Okay, I could read a lot. I could get up to speed. I could feel comfortable. Well, I'm never going to know everything before this meeting. Yeah, that makes sense because I'm pretty busy. All right, so what can I achieve right now? And then how do I feel comfortable being honest about what I may not know? And that to me is like me setting more realistic goals for myself, and frankly, being kind to myself. And if you're not kind to yourself, then how the heck do you expect others to be kind to you? I see a lot of leaders be really brutally hard on themselves, and then therefore they're hard on their teams. And I, by the way, like I have a very high standard for myself, so I make no mistake that I'm ambitious and I hold myself to a high standard and I love preparing for things and I love, wrapping my arms and legs around whatever it is that I need to be knowledgeable in. But I'm also kind to myself and I'm realistic about it because if I wasn't, I don't think this would be a sustainable job, nor would this industry be sustainable. And I think the industry needs more leaders who think this way. And as a result, like I'm going to keep doing things to be kind to myself. So I'm a leader who's here, who creates the space for other people who are looking for leaders like me.
I always think the leader who holds on, I think of a lot of sand in your hand and your team will slip through your cracks the tighter you hold. And by the way, no one's going to innovate or trust or anything like that. Last question. What are you beta testing right now, personal or professional?
Oh, I have so many professional things and so much goodness that we're building. I couldn't honestly be prouder of our teams. Like, I think everyone told me when we got acquired, like, oh, this is where innovation, big companies, entrepreneurial, innovative companies, this is where it dies. And people could not have been more wrong. Like, we just put fuel on the fire of not only everything that the InfoSum team was doing, but we're sparking so much innovation just across WPP in general. So watch this space for a range of things that we're going to do and that we're proudly doing with clients. I think for me personally, I am really digging into how I can automate my day-to-day tasks and how I can offload things, using tooling like Claude and Copilot. And we're embracing a lot more enterprise technology tools in-house. And what I mean by like everyone's embracing that, I get it, but I'm actually have to carve out the time to do it. So I think the beta test is like, am I, yes, no, carving out an hour here, an hour there, like actually scheduling myself to listen to a podcast that I, saw on the subject. And it's for a variety of reasons. One, because I need to be knowledgeable on this, but two, it's making my life more sustainable the more that I spend time in it. And I think rare has there been an example of that where the effort you put in, the value you can extract out is just so much more. And so it's an easy equation for me to just carve out that time, but you still have to do it. And so for me personally, it's just making that time.
Thank you. You are exactly how I remember you. You're poised. You're brilliant. You're inspiring. I'm not kidding. You gave my audience a lot to consider with really specific ways to get there. Thank you so, so much.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me.
It was good to see you. Thank you for being my sponsor moving forward. Just kidding. I'll talk to you soon.
I will sponsor you.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.